Imagine, every day, I give you a cherry lollipop. You know, first day, wow, thanks for the lollipop. That was real nice of you. Second day, you're a little less excited, but, you know, still thankful. But by the 365th time, I give you a cherry lollipop. You may sit back and ask me, maybe I could have something else. So obviously, I retort with slapping the shit out of you and giving you another cherry lollipop. Because Division 2, if you give me another Providence 48 hours backpack, I am going to freak the fuck out! So I may need to go deal with some court stuff, nothing serious, just quadruple homicide. Okay, so the Division 1 got a lot of shit for its bullet sponge bosses, boring story, and of course the live service model with its goddamn roadmap. But here in the Division 2, there are things to applaud and of course things I hate, so let's get into it. This is the Division 2. We pick up after the events of the Division 1, where Washington, D.C. has fallen into complete chaos and the original president and vice president have been killed, and the Speaker of the House has needed to be promoted. A virus known as DC-62 being the culprit for the downfall of civilization in the US. In the Division 2, your main goal is to get DC back on its feet and deal with the many criminal factions that have risen up in the city. The story in the Division 2 is at least a bit more present, more cutscenes, more story and character development, but like Kristen Stewart in any movie, just because it's there doesn't mean it's good. No, it's not awful, but it's just serviceable. It's black and white, we are the good guys and they are the bad guys, nothing interesting. I would be surprised if anyone could actually articulate the entire story of the Division. I mean, let's really dive deep into the powerful message of the Division, which is the homeless looking people over there, they're bad. The Charles Manson looking motherfucker slaughtering them? Good! I mean, maybe it's a message about gentrification and the big capitalist corporations driving at the poor and establishing douchey vegan restaurants with little regard for the environment, meaning we need to overthrow the bourgeoisie patriarchy and slay all men and then... Oh. Thank you, Frollo.
Frollo lives to serve, master.
You eventually drive out all the evil factions and then are invaded by the Black Tusks, an extremely organized, highly trained PMC group. They invade after you deal with the three factions of the game, leaving a power vacuum. These guys are a bit samey, but do bring some different gadgets and things that you can fight against, but we'll get into that in the gameplay section. Sorry about all the commie stuff. I'm half communist on my mother's side. I think that's how it works. Anyway, the story is serviceable enough for an MMO anyway, and most will ignore it or skip it entirely, though I do appreciate the at least half-assed attempt. Now that we got the equivalent of the clear shit that comes out of the ketchup bottle, let's get to the... ketchup? This is the gameplay. The newest product from Ubisoft is an open-world game where you take on bases and roving bands of enemies from different factions how you see fit. Oh, I'm sorry, is this not Division 2 gameplay? My bad. The Division 2 doesn't really differ from Uno that much, and the controls and the feel of your character feels a bit looser, but at the same time better. You still get 2 abilities to assign, but the number of abilities has barely expanded upon from the last game. Most of these abilities can be modded to heal, locate, or in general do a lot of the same things they have done since the Division 1. The Division 2 is still a heavily stat-based game, meaning if you're not a big stat junkie enjoying accessing over the most optimal build, then I don't know if you're going to find much to keep you playing. The perks in the game, as well as the ones in the specializations, is standard fare and to me are a bit boring as someone who doesn't love the stat obsession. If you like it, fine, but it's just not for me. And you had better really enjoy looking at stats rather than the actual equipment itself, because you get the same exact items over and over and over and over again. I wished I would have kept the amount of Providence 48 hours backpacks I got, and that applies to pretty much everything in the game. Holsters, backpacks, gloves, most of everything you get from level 1 to 30, most of it will never be very unique. I have a friend that's 10 levels above me and I still have a lot of the same looking equipment than he has. He was real excited to show me his FAMAS 2010 rifle, only to find out that I had an already lower level version of it. You may feel more powerful, but looking it sure would be cool too. The Division is still much the same third-person cover-based shooter it was a few years ago. The mission structure and the majority of the missions you play are serviceable shooting galleries with bullet spongy elite boys with thick boy armor on. And now it's time for a game I like to call Who's the Boss? I'm gonna show you two NPCs, dead. Don't ask how they got there. I'm gonna show you these two NPCs and you're gonna tell me which one of them is a boss in the game. Well, can you tell? You can't? Well, it's obvious. It's the right one. That one's name in-game is the Butcher, and the other one is just a faceless grunt. I don't know how you couldn't tell, really. Actually, a lot of the bosses in-game look a lot like the regular grunts you fight. The main reason you don't see any realistic MMOs is the same problem the Division has. All the bosses are these thick boys with big armor, with guns or sledgehammers. I mean, what else are they gonna do? You will be getting the same content forever. And the one time they didn't do the thick boy boss, everyone hated it. The fucking helicopter in the Division 1, it was boring, it didn't work. For me, there is a reason the majority of MMOs are fantasy-based. There's simply more creative options there, and here in the Division, you're not really gonna get a whole lot of variety in what you get in the content. Now, just want everyone to know that I don't think the Division is an awful game. Ubisoft has long become comfortable with okay products, hooking as many fans as they can and keeping them on the money line. I think this game is better than the first, but that doesn't mean anything when the game before is largely the same thing. This game certainly looks better graphically. I found very few bugs, and the game crashed only once during almost 100 hours of play. It launched very smoothly for me, at least. Now, the Dark Zone, once again, is largely the same as it was before, though with nice upgrades, the road system is rewarding enough for people to try and get away with it, stealing from other players or finding it just yourself with 3 Dark Zones now. At least you don't have to look at the same thing every time you go into the Dark Zone, but it is largely the same experience from the last game with a few minor improvements. This time around, we actually get a conflict or PvP mode, and I actually really enjoyed it. I like it. They normalize stats for all equipment. They currently have 2 modes, Domination and Team Deathmatch, 4v4. I like how the cover-based gameplay and the abilities translate over to this PvP experience. It feels tactical. You develop battle lines, being pushed back and forth. I like it, but being a live service game, they probably had more modes, but they gotta have more stuff for the fucking roadmap. And finally, the endgame. Probably the more insulting thing about this game. You beat the factions, they lose control, then the PMC Black Tusks invade. The missions you previously played, but now they just have minutely changed objectives. Boom, there's your endgame. I've had many people say that the missions are the same but harder. It's not as bad as Anthem. At least here you get some new enemies. They use a couple new gadgets against you and things they use to fight against you, but they have many of the exact same enemy types. Now, map-wise, things get turned over. They take over all or some of the control points and locations you captured and make you do them again, but this time with the Tusk Boys. They even take the strongholds back and replace the original enemies with these guys. It's lazy. The map gets a bit more active, putting those overused open world mechanics Ubisoft loves so much on steroids, with having enemies traverse between bases. Man, it's something we've never seen before from Ubisoft. This is lazy. Not as lazy as Anthem, but again, that's not saying fucking much. The Division is far from the worst game on the market, but Ubisoft loves making games that are fine enough to get sales, but not great enough to set expectations they have to live up to. Every one of their games is becoming Ghost Recon Wildlands. All of their games are becoming this homogenous blob. It's plain to see the laziness and corporate hackery, finding a formula, and then beating that horse so bad they leave boot imprints on it. The Division Part 2 is largely the same game as before. Granted, the gameplay and controls are a bit better. The missions, story missions, are a bit grander and have at least a few more cool moments than in the last game, but when I fight the Thick Boy Squad for the 50th time, I'm bored. There's too little added here for me to recommend this game to somebody who didn't like the first one. But if you love the first game, then you will definitely love this one. Poor bastards. But I'm not about to sit here for 2 years on end to see this long and windy roadmap down to completion. But now, it's verdict time. Sadly, Ubisoft has become the Borg.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc.
Your studio will lower its shields and will be assimilated and be made to make open-world RPGs with our exact formula.
Ubisoft, you have violated the laws of basic human decency. We will never join you.
But we'll make lots of money.
Shit, did he say a lot of money? I give the Difficile Dose a 7 out of 10. It's serviceable, fine. That's all Ubisoft seems to be able to do nowadays. But I've droned on long enough. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I thank you so much for watching. Denwise!